All right, everyone. Very good evening. So I think we can begin. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and thank you, Seema, for taking out such valuable time
Thank
informing our
you.
learners about the upcoming and, if I may say so, radical revolutionary changes to the GMSE or to the GMAT rather, right? So, as all of you guys know, the current edition of the GMAT will retire by the 31st of January next year, right? So going forward, from that point onwards, and even from 7th of November onwards, GMAT Focus will pretty much be the only go-to exam that will be accepted by top business schools, right? So it is important that we get the right communication from the right people, and who better than Seema, the Associate Manager of Outreach at GMSE, to inform us of these changes, what it means for your scoring scales, percentiles. As some of you may know, I had already wrote a mock for the GMAT Focus and then shared my insights and findings as well. And of course, Seema's perspective provides a more holistic point of view to the entire upcoming changes to the GMAT Focus edition. So currently I have a bad throat, which is why I haven't got my camera on. So I must ask your pardon for, or seek your pardon for all of that. But I'm definitely there on audio. So Seema will be conducting the majority of the session, informing us of the changes, what it means for the scoring scales, the percentiles, whether one section will be more important than the other section, how business schools will look at the GMAT Focus score going forward. Can the current GMAT edition exams still be taken for, let's say, round 2 or round 3 of some business schools? Will it have any impact on your applications, etc., etc.? And those of you who stay till the end, we have also got a great piece of document for you provided by Seema herself, right? So that contains all the information on different types of scholarships that are available at top business schools, right? So this is only for those of you who stay till the end. So do stay till the end, as it will promise to be an extremely informative and engaging session. So I'll just introduce Seema before I let her take over. So she's a seasoned professional with more than 11 years of experience in the domains of product management, business development, entrepreneurship, stakeholder management, and international test prep, right? So she has sort of been, the recipient of first-hand information to all of the changes that, keep taking place at GMSE. And therefore, she has been providing us with an abundance of information, really enabling us to stay ahead of our game in terms of the kind of communication we have with all of you and the information that we provide, and ensuring that it is reliable, correct, and not just based on hearsay that is there on, let's say, places such as GMAT Club or Beat the GMAT, where it's a lot of innuendo without any verification or validation. So we don't, try to rely on those sites as much as we do on Seema when it comes to providing information on anything related to the GMAT exam, right? So she's the Associate Manager of Outreach at GMSE. And this session is going to be extremely, extremely interactive, right? So do make sure that you participate, right? Because the more you participate, the more engaging, the more interactive this session will be. So with that, I'll let Seema take over. All yours, Seema.
Thank you, Param. Thank you
Thank
for that
you.
introduction. And welcome to everybody who's joined in today on a Sunday evening, that too. So I'm actually excited to talk about a lot of information, but I'll give you a brief as to what I would essentially be covering, because I will still touch upon what's there in the Focus edition and the changes and, especially the score bit. But of course, I would also be touching upon, what to do if you've already been preparing for the exam, and little bit of tips with respect to your preparation, and of course, touching upon your scholarships as well. So I'm going to share my screen right now to let me know once you're able to actually see it. And so if you can see that, you can hit a yes on the chat box.
Yes, I can see the
Perfect.
screen. It's perfect.
Awesome. Thank you, Isha. Thank you, Risha. Um, Now, to kickstart with, I always say that this is my personal favorite, which is, always talking about who we are, because I feel that this makes a lot of sense with respect to understanding why we do what we do, and, anything and everything related to the GMAT and the intention behind any change that actually happens to the GMAT exam as well. First of all, when we talk about the Graduate Management Admission Council, that is the owner and administrator of the GMAT exam, which is where I'm from, obviously. And it's, it was established in 1953, to say the least, and it was established by 9 member schools. So when we say council, that's essentially business schools. We are made up of business schools. All the decisions, anything that's produced, all of those things are for the business schools. Especially, it was, the GMAT exam originated because there was a need for an assessment that would help both, the business schools as well as candidates like you find your best fit business education, right? But GMAT is not the only exam we own. We also own the NMAT exam. I don't know how many of you heard of that, but that's used for MBA programs or business masters programs in India as well as Africa and other regions like East Asia. Okay. Plus, we have the executive assessment, which is like, let's say you decide as an undergraduate student you want to work for a couple of years. The eventual, maybe after 6 years or so, the eventual thing that you'd go into, or the course that you'll go into, is an executive MBA program. So executive assessment is a 90-minute test which is used by business schools globally for EMBA programs. But I do have to tell you that in India, the business schools usually look at the GMAT and not maybe the EA. Probably in the future they will, but right now they look at the GMAT exam for the EMBA programs. All right. So if you're looking at the Indian business schools, I believe that that's your course of action. And of course, we'll have business fundamentals for people who want to brush upon their basic skills, especially if you're from non-engineering, your engineering background. And of course, if you're non-engineering and out of touch with the topics for a bit. And now, talking about the Focus Edition, so one brief background that I do want to give about the Focus Edition is all of these changes that happen at the GMAC, let me assure you that nothing happens overnight. All right. There's a lot of research that go into it. So GMAT has always been the gold standard when it comes to an assessment for business schools or getting into a graduate business education, to really understand or really check a candidate's, that is your preparedness for succeeding in a business education. It's not just like an entry point into it, but your possibility of really doing well. And of course, you doing well means you getting into the career of your choice and growing there as well. Because you can get into your education, not necessarily that you do well in that. You can finish your education and get into a job initially, but then doesn't mean that you can get into that. So this entire journey is to make sure that you do succeed in whatever you are actually going about and doing. And over a period of time, nothing is constant. There was a need for change, and especially for going with a shorter exam. But when we think about a shorter exam, it's also important to make sure that it continues to do what it is expected to do. That is, see whether you're still ready for the rigor of a business education, a graduate business education. And that's what Focus Edition, and the result of continuous research over the past years, which involves business schools, which involves, from business schools, you have the admission professionals, you have the faculty, you have other partners, everybody who, has been involved in this process. And the final outcome is the Focus Edition. So as I said, all of these changes have not happened overnight. It has happened with all of the people who, are going to use the exam involved in the process as well. Now, to talk a bit about the Focus Edition, obviously, you know that it's getting shorter. And, there are some changes with respect to the testing experience in terms of the efficiency, in terms of score sending. But before we do that, let's address the structure and what's really changing. So if you know the current version of the exam, and I'm sure that a lot of you may have prepared as well, but we'll get to that in the question round. In the current version, you have the quantitative reasoning with about 31 questions to be answered in 62 minutes. Your major questions are problem solving and data sufficiency. Verbal reasoning, you have 36 questions to be answered in 65 minutes. 6 to 61 is your score range. Critical reasoning, reading comprehension, and sentence correction. Then you have your integrated reasoning with 12 questions to be answered in 30 minutes. 1 to 8 is the score range. But let me make a quick note here that your integrated reasoning score is not a part of your total score of 200 to 800. Okay. You have questions like multi-source reasoning, table analysis, graphics interpretation, two-part analysis. And lastly, you have the analytical writing score range is 0 to 6. One essay, an argument essay to be answered in about 30 minutes. Again, this code is not a part of your 200 to 800. So total of 80 questions to be answered in 3 hours and 7 minutes. So I kept repeating one aspect that, integrated reasoning and analytical writing are not a part of the total score. So what does become a part of the total score? Your quantitative reasoning and the verbal reasoning, right? So hold on to that thought because you'll know why when we actually go through the focus edition. If you look at the focus edition, you have 3 sections, your quant, verbal, which you already did have, up in the current version. Then you have a new section, which is data insights. But if you really look closely into the data insights, you'll find that the questions already did exist, which is in the integrated reasoning questions are there, plus data sufficiency questions are there. So if you wonder why has, this data insight section been introduced, because now your 3 sections and not 2 sections is going to contribute to the total score. So each section has 45 minutes of duration. 60 to 90 is the score range for each section. So again, that's a change. The other one was 6 to 51. And quant has 21 questions, verbal 23 questions, and data insights 20 questions. What data insights essentially does is, and how it's different from IR, is that it's a newly calibrated section that tests you on your data literacy skills. I mean, when you get into a real world business scenario, you are going to see huge numbers, you're going to see jargons, but the essentiality is for you to weed out the unnecessary information and look at the right kind of information and get to your results, right? And that's exactly what the data insight section actually does. And, for example, if you're going to start working for Amazon, they're not going to actually maybe order, go do a transaction of just 10 packages because it's just, you find it hard to kind of like deal with huge numbers or things that look like huge numbers. But again, data insights is not completely math. It's a mix of math, analytics, as well as verbal skills. So you're going to find these 3 things which are actually tested, plus your data sufficiency as well. Based on data, can you come to a specific conclusion or not? Now, if you look at verbal reasoning, one major chunk is missing, which is sentence correction. Now, when we thought about reducing the length of the exam, ideally, we wanted to make sure that, the exam does, as I said, does what it's supposed to do, right? It measures your capacity to really survive, really do well, not to survive, I mean, do exceptionally in your business education. And for that, there are certain skill sets that you really need, which is your critical thinking skills, your analytical skills, your problem solving skills, which do get tested even now. But sentence correction essentially did not actually test you as much on these skills as much as it did on communication and grammar, which is why it's kind of like gone off. And of course, you'd find one major section, which I'd like to think a big favorite, which is the essay, which is no longer a part of the focus edition. And in the quantitative reasoning, you just have the problem solving now, right? So we talked about a few features that's actually getting introduced, which improves the efficiency and flexibility of the exam. The first one is question review and edit feature. So does that mean that GMAT is no longer adaptive? 100% it is adaptive. Means that you cannot skip questions. You have to answer every single question until the end of the section. But as you move through the questions, you can bookmark questions that you're unsure about. You'll still answer it, but you probably want to come back and give your shot to fix that response, right? So if you answer, again, talking more about question adaptive, let's say you answer the first question right, the second question is going to be harder, the third question is going to be harder as you keep answering right. And if you answer a question wrong, the next question is going to be slightly easier. But that does not mean that any easy question means that you've done wrong. And even if you get 1 or 2 questions wrong, that it's going to affect your scores, massively. But just to give you perspective about question adaptive. Now, what happens with review feature? So when you reach the end of the section, you have 45 minutes. So maybe you have 1 to 2 minutes remaining towards the end of the section. You will see a numbered list of questions, both bookmarked and non-bookmarked, but you can go back and review as many questions as you want. I personally would advise review the questions that you have bookmarked so that you can make effective use of your this feature. And then you will be able to edit up to 3 responses. Now, 3 responses means, let's say if I answer question number 6, if I change that question number 6 thrice, that will be considered as 3 responses. So do keep that in mind, okay? The next one is selecting section order. In the current version, you have 3 specified orders. With the newer version, you have 6 combinations that you can work with. But you will not be randomly making up your mind during the exam. You do have to make sure that you understand which order to go with, which you will be able to figure out as you go through your mock test and as you go through your practice. You'll figure, do I want to go with that section that I feel tougher, or do I want to kind of like do a question section which I feel easier first and then move on. So that's entirely very subjective. The next one is info score report. As an academician, I think this is my favorite because currently there is an ESR report, that's an enhanced score report, okay? And what the enhanced score report comes at an additional cost of $30. And this contains a lot of insights with respect to your, content domain, question types, time management, and a lot of information in that way. What's going to happen with the Focus Edition is that all of this information is going to be made available for free in your official score report. You'll be able to see obviously your percentile ranking by section and total score. Alongside that, let's say you send your score report to a business school, you'll be able to see your percentile ranking versus other people who have sent the scores to the same school. So you can gauge, where you stand and what your chances are. Plus, of course, all of the other features and question review and edit insights as well. So a lot of insights coming your way in case you do decide to take the test again. You have more information, you know exactly where you went wrong, and you will be able to make a more informed preparation when you move ahead with that. And the last one is easier score sending. So GMAT does allow you to send 5 free score reports to the business schools. Now, there's a difference in the benefits as afforded to the online test versus a test center delivery. Basically, in the online exam, you give the exam, you don't have to do anything during that time. You complete that exam. After 7 days, when you get your score report on MBA.com, you have a 48-hour window during which you can carefully contemplate and decide to which schools you want to send your score report to. Okay, those 5 free score reports. Whereas in the test center, you have to select those 5 free programs, like to which you want to send these free score reports to, right before the exam. And immediately after the exam, you'll be told, do you want to cancel it or do you want to kind of keep your score? It's such a pressurizing point during that period. Not only do you have to go through the entire exam process, plus make this decision, right? So whatever benefit is afforded to the online will shift here. You don't have to make that selection right before the exam. You will have the same window, and then you'll be able to get that 48-hour window after you get your official score report to select those programs. Plus, one major difference is that in the current version, when you send your score report to a business school, if you have taken the exam like twice, then all of your scores will be sent to, like both the scores will be sent to the business school. With the Focus Edition, let's say if you've taken the exam 4 times also, you'll be able to select the specific appointment that you want to send to the business school. So you have a lot of control. So if you see all of the changes that has come in, most of it is something that's really beneficial for you. It's really adding on a lot of value and is adding on a lot of flexibility and probably removing a lot of pressure points that you would have otherwise faced during the exam, right? Now, let's take a quick look at what's changing and what's not changing. In terms of acceptance, I know that there's a lot of things floating around, but let me assure you that the acceptance is now going to change. GMAT is accepted by over 7,700 programs across 2,400 business schools, across 110 countries, including India. including Indian business programs, MBA programs, because GMAT is AICTE certified and like ratified, and it's used for two-year PGDM programs as well. So that's not going to change at all. So online and offline delivery, again, not going to change. We talked about the structure, design, score scale. We will address it a little bit more in detail. Let's quickly dive into the attempts. In a year, you still have 5 attempts. Like you can attempt it in a rolling 12-month period. You can attempt it 5 times, but with a 16-day waiting period between 2 appointments. That still stays the same. And also you have the 8-time lifetime limit. So if you have taken the exam, let's say 2 times in the current version, then you will be able to take it in the, the remaining attempts is what 6 attempts is what you will be having for the focus edition. So that's one major change. The fees is going to be at par with the current version of the GMAT exam. The only difference again is you do get a lot of benefit, plus the free score reports. You'll be able to make better, decisions. You're not under a lot of pressure. So all of those advantages do come with the exam. Now, for those of you who have been contemplating about taking the current version versus the focus edition, there's an important update. I'm sure that, our team has already sent out the mail through mba.com, but it's important I address this, and I will take a lot of questions after this on this if you have queries. So the appointments, as Param earlier said, are starting. The exam appointments for the focus edition are starting from November 7th onwards. But if you do want to give the exam, please make sure that you book your testing slots in advance. You have to understand that a lot of people are, may have pushed their plans to later, and we have increased the testing capacity, but the fact is there are going to be a lot of test takers, and you might not find the location and the time slot of your preference. So please make sure that you do book in advance. So ideally, if you're looking at round 2 and round 3, this might actually fit you better. And as I said, all of these new features are available as well. The current version of the GMAT exam is sunsetting, or it's going to end by Jan 31st, which means that from Feb 1st onwards, you only have the focus edition. I'm sure that if you have thought about actually, what if I want to still take it, or I want to take the current version itself, I'd advise you to book it as soon as possible, at least right before Jan 31st. If anybody actually books their test after, let's say, the current version, if you have very few people have, by the way, and if you're one of those people who have, you will be able to reschedule it to earlier at no additional cost, or you can get a full refund in case you don't want to take that exam at all as well. So a lot of flexibilities in that respect has been added, taking into consideration if you have been considering that exam after Jan 31st. All right. Now, let's address the new score scale. This is a very important thing that a lot of people have been debating about, as to why do we have a new score scale? Does it mean that it's going to, my score is lesser? So one important factor, your current version, or the GMAT exam, is based on 2 sections. The total score is based on 2 sections, which we have addressed. If you look at the GMAT exam focus edition, its total score is based on 3 sections, as you can see on the screen. Your total score ranges from 205 to 805 in increments of 10. Your section scores range from 60 to 90 in increments of 1. Because having this 5 and this different score scales can help you understand the difference between the current version and focus scores, because obviously the current version of the exam is going to be valid for the next 5 years. Okay. When business schools, and again, this is something funny, because a lot of people have been saying that business schools don't understand how to actually look at both these scores. Before I talk about that, I want to say that, you can't directly compare both the scores, obviously, because of one, the 3 sections versus the 2 sections. Second, a lot of new features have been introduced there. The score has been obviously recalibrated for that purpose. But let me add this one factor. I already did mention right in the beginning that when the changes were happening, we have about 227 plus business schools in our, who are our members. So all of these people have given their inputs. These people, the business schools have been a part of this entire process. So 100% know, they do know exactly what's happening. Second thing is that you're talking about outcomes of business schools who are producing global business leaders. And I'm sure that they know how to actually go through this course, and they are 100% on board with respect to the current version versus the newer version, how to look at it. All right. So I think I've established that you can't directly compare the scores from the early version of the exam to the GMAT exam focus edition. Everybody is going to start looking at the percentile ranking. So this is a very unbiased way to actually look at it, because this is a common ground or the common point. If my percentile ranking is 75, means I perform better than 75% of the test takers. With respect to, again, the score difference, yes, if I have scored a score of 605 on the GMAT exam focus edition, that means my competitiveness is going to be at a 72nd percentile, which is equivalent to a 640 in the current version of the GMAT exam. But as I said, they are not directly comparable. What is the thing that the business schools are going to look at and know that this is the median score is by looking at the percentile ranking. So they're completely on board with that, guys. Okay. The next is, if you do want to actually go ahead and understand, how these percentile rankings work across sections, do go to mba.com and /scores. That will give you a better perspective as to, what the difference is, where the percentile ranking is, and more information there. Now, official prep has already been launched. You have the official guide, the quantitative review, verbal review, and data insights review. You have your official practice exams, which is paid practice is 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and then your free practice exams 1 and 2 are there. Now you can take the practice exams, the free practice exams 1 and 2 for the current version also, and also for the focus edition. So your complete, I think resources to actually go through this entire practice, plus a 6-week study plan is also there. Now, again, you can actually, the scanner is not there, but if you go to mba.com, Google version of the exam, what happens, or what's going to happen, and can you easily shift into the focus edition or not? 100% yes, because the questions have not essentially changed. The items are still same. What what I would suggest that you do is take a practice exam, see how you're actually faring in that, and do you need more preparation in the new exam format? Obviously, you have this data insights, which was never important, or people didn't really, I've taught GMAT as well, so I know for a fact that it was never like very important, because everybody was like 200 to 800, I look at it, and IR is not going to contribute to that. What just happened was what was already there now suddenly became important, because it's now becoming a part which contributes to the total score. So you'll have to see where you are at with your preparation, and make sure you get the right amount of practice and go ahead and take the exam. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. I know that I've been breezing through this entire thing, going really fast, because I do want to take a lot of questions, but I'm going to kind of go a bit slower on this with respect to prep tips. Very generic, but very effective ones. One, the first thing that, when you go about preparing for your exam is definitely to understand all parts of the exam. When I say all parts of the exam, it's not just the question types, what is there in terms of question types, but also understanding what skills are tested in those question types. Because even if you look at reading comprehension, it's still looking at your ability to actually look at information and make logical conclusions, or logically arrive at an answer. It's not testing you on your English. And there are different kinds of questions which have different means to actually test you on certain skills. If you understand exactly what they are, your process becomes much easier. Second thing is setting realistic schedules, study schedules. A lot of times people end up preparing for 1 year, 2 year, or maybe even 4 years. I met somebody who did prepare for almost 4 years. The problem here is when you start preparing, you give yourself all of these crazy expectations, when you're not, and which is, obviously you can't live up to those expectations, because if you say that, let's say I'm a working professional, And I am saying that every day I'm going to spend like maybe 2 to 3 hours, which is realistically not possible. If I come back after a hard day and I start doing GMAT questions, I probably absolutely hate the preparation. I will not get anything right because my mind is not fresh. You need to be able to apply your brain. So you have to see when your maximum capacity is or when your maximum processing time is and schedule things accordingly. So make sure that you set up realistic schedules, give time for yourself to have fun, give time for you to actually meet your deadlines at work, and cater to all of those things when you prepare your schedule. When you go through your prep, one of the things I'm sure that Param can relate, is when you take let's say you complete your practice and you get to a point where you're taking practice exams, you'll find that you end up getting, you might hit the score plateau, as we call it. um, a plateau basically means that no matter how many times you go through the exam, you're just hitting the same score again and again. And that's the point where you have to realize that you need to go back and review things. So don't bulldoze through your questions. Don't go through how questions how you might have done through your entrance examinations like your JEE. Brute force does not really work here. If you do 10 questions, go back and understand why you got them right and why you got them wrong as well. Maintaining an error log really helps. And of course, testing anxiety. How do you deal with that? Well, with Focus Edition, a lot of the anxiety has definitely been taken off. But I'm sure that with all of the stake, we know what's at stake. The anxiety is a very real thing. For you to deal with this, the best way is to make sure.
Seema, I think you're not audible.
Okay,
Yeah, now you are. Now you are.
can you
So
hear me now?
yes, now we can. So
Okay.
maybe just the last
Do,
5 seconds was when you're not audible.
oh, okay, so I was just talking about test anxiety. I was just saying that, if make sure that you actually take the practice exams in the kind of environment that you are likely to take the actual exam. And don't be on your Instagram and don't pick up your calls and everything during the exam, because obviously you're not going to be able to do that on your actual test date. So yeah, so I think that was my last 5 seconds either ways. Now let's address the really important thing,
Perfect.
which is I think we've talked about the timelines, November 7th and Jan 31st. I'm not going through that again. But let's address scholarships. One of the things which is obviously true is business education is not. I mean, it can look pretty daunting. I mean, especially the finances, especially the tuition fee and everything can look daunting. But the investment is worth the returns. Because when you look at an MBA program globally, you are looking at maybe, I mean, at least the 1 crore to 2 crores of salary on an average that you can think about getting, especially if you get into the good business schools. And even if you don't, I mean, it's all down to your networking and connecting with people and making sure you get through to the right job. Anyways, that's what it prepares you for as well. But there are various ways to fund your program, because I've seen many people drop their MBA plans or many people drop their business masters plans because they're like, this is just way beyond my means. But that's not really true. I mean, yes, scholarships are competitive. I'm not going to say that, you just apply and then immediately business school is going to give you a scholarship, but there are ways to go about it. So I'll make sure that I share this with you, Param, as well, because I have a few links here. I mean, I think in
Sure.
the resource that I've shared with you, these links are also there where they'll be able to individually go through and identify the different kinds of, ways to fund the.
Perfect.
So first one is need-based scholarships that most of the business schools actually give. So especially if you're somebody who can't fund them, fund yourself, and you need to have those documents to prove the fact that you can't fund yourself. But at the same time, the business school is not going to just give you money because you don't have the means to pay for it. Your academic score has to be good. Your work experience still has to be relevant. Your GMAT score has to be good. So, and your essays, of course, they expect you to write a separate essay for this as well. When you cater in all of these things, that's when and plus, you have financial difficulty. It means you are a really good candidate However, while you want to go study there, you don't have the means to actually fund it. And that's when you will be for sure considered for a need-based scholarship. Again, very competitive. Most scholarships are often given through merit-based scholarship though. Okay. So I think about 85% of the scholarships that come from the business school are through merit-based scholarships. Basically, if you this normally happens through the application process itself. In some cases, you may have to submit earlier, like in round one or so. But most merit-based scholarships happen, or you get considered through your application for the MBA program. If you have shown a very strong academic profile, or if you have shown very strong work experience, plus a lot of other factors taken into consideration, your essays and your other initiatives, your commitment to the community, all of these things considered, business schools really want you there. So which is why they will give you a scholarship. Again, scholarships can be fully funded or partially funded. Okay, means in some cases they might give you just a tuition fee, and in some cases they might give you half of the tuition fee. In some cases, the full tuition fee plus the stipend for you to actually stay there. So there are variations, and you'll be able to get all of this information on the business school website. The next one is diversity and diversity, equity, and inclusion based scholarships. There are two ways you can consider this. Actually, multiple ways you can consider this, because some of the external funded scholarships also tend to kind of like come in this, because that's kind of like you can consider it as both category. But one is scholarship for women in business. Let's face it, there are not a lot of women in the business leadership space, which is why business schools do want more women candidates to come in. So anybody who shows strong leadership skills, relevant work experience, and of course, a strong potential to succeed. There are various scholarships which are both given by solely the business schools, plus bodies in partnerships with bodies like, let's say, Forte Foundation is there, which offers scholarship. You might even get a fully funded program. You have the 30% club, Laidlaw Foundation. So some of these, again, may be relevant to an Indian audience. Some of them may not be. I'll show you in the subsequent slides where you might find that information, and which are relevant to you as well. Then the next one is the scholarship for underrepresented groups. This largely is definitely for a US crowd, because you have these ethnic minorities and other aspects that they consider when giving admissions. So, you can kind of like go and check if there are any possibilities, because I don't know your background. So that's something that you can actually explore as well. So here are some of the scholarships that use a GMAT exam. So one of the criteria for scholarships is definitely the GMAT exam. And you do have to score well for, getting the scholarships as well. You have the HEC Paris scholarship. Sorry, can't pronounce it as well, but the Alba Graduate School gives you scholarship. Bocconi, Bayes, EDHEC, you have the ESSEC. So all of these business schools offer varying kinds of scholarship. All right. So please don't think that, okay, I'm going to get a full funding here or a partial funding here. There are different kinds of scholarship that each business school actually provides. For that information, you do have to go to the business school. I mean, there is no way around it. All right. When you look at the US schools, you'll find Harvard Business Schools have the HBS Fellowships, Baker Scholars Program. Stanford has the Reliance Zero Buy Fellowship. Wharton has got the, Wharton Fellowships, as well as the Emerging Economies Fellowship, and a lot more. These are just like a couple of things that I'm talking about. Now, let's take a look at how you're going to see that. So for both business masters, like your financial analytics, your business analytics, or business intelligence and data analytics, all of these programs do have funding as well. When you, for example, you can see on the screen on left hand side, I have the Edinburgh MBA program. As you can see there, they've written there are multiple deadlines. Your value is 5,000. Nationality is all countries. So that's another thing you have to take into consideration. Is a scholarship offered for your nationality, or is it for the domestic student, or for an international student? So you technically become an international student. Now, within international student, they may give different scholarships for people from different countries. Maybe somebody coming from an Africa can have different, funding as well. So you'll have to see what really fits you. You can see Chicago, both the available awards like Grandson Awards that they have, AH Tobacco Wala Fellowship, Canfield Private Equity Fellowship, each has got its own eligibility. So you can see it's really extensive. You need to do your due diligence, do research. Wharton has got the Joseph Wharton Fellowships, Emerging Economy Fellowships, as I just mentioned, Forte Fellowship, which is again alongside an external party. If you see right at the bottom, the INSEAD also, I think about 90 plus scholarship opportunities are approximately there with INSEAD. So they have this need-based, merit-based, and I think the underlying factor is to make sure that you go ahead and check what the requirements are. I've given a few examples from Frankfurt School here, Hong Kong University. Then this is again from, what do you call, another school as well. This is the external scholarships, by the way, for women. The Lady Mayor by D Tata Education Trust Scholarship, which is variable. The Nestle Scholarship for women. And please make sure this is quite extensive, that you do your research. Again, an extension. Each, again, for need-based scholarships, there are multiple considerations, in the sense, in the case of Stanford, you can see that they look at the cost of the attendance, the assets and income, the contributions from your parents or other people, your other external scholarships that you may be getting as well. And all of these factors are what contributes to you qualifying for that need-based or financial aid need as well. You need to, again, I know I'm repeating myself quite a bit here. There's a lot of opportunities, but unless and until you actually go do that due research, you would not be able to actually find out what your opportunities are. Okay. Now, here are some of the other ways, maybe not the most traditional way, but where you can still kind of cover your funding or cover your expenses. One is assistantships, which I'm sure you've heard, where you get to assist the faculty duties or you teach, and this is generally more common in the US schools. Fellowships, again, I think fellowships were a part of the scholarships aspect in what I've mentioned earlier, but technically, they kind of come from maybe an individual funding it or a corporate funding it or a specific foundation actually funding it. So it's a kind of, you could say, a funding or a kind of scholarship that comes from different bodies. Stipend is, of course, I think more in terms of, again, maybe as a part of scholarship as well, where they would give you an additional amount to cover your living expenses and other expenses, academic expenses that you are likely to actually incur. And again, you can see that, in USA, about 23% of students have actually received that. The last one, work study, does not actually apply everywhere because, each country has its own rules and regulations. But this is about kind of like, doing part-time work while you're studying. But this is very, very region specific. And lastly, before I end my monologue, I'd rather say, is how do you get through to these scholarships? Like, I'm just going to talk about 3 basic elements that you need to consider, right? Out of which, you will arrive at this when you have done your research, when you've identified the kind of things that you want to apply for. One is developing a really strong application. I mean, a really standard application. Because many people would be applying to this, and money is something that is not lying around, and business schools are very prudent about giving it out as well. So they look at people who really deserve it. So you need to build an all-round profile with respect to, kind of value that you're going to bring to the business school. Not just your academic profile, not just your work experience, but other aspects that would really make sure that, you tell them that you're going to succeed and you're going to grow in ways that is going to really improve the brand of that business school. The next one is submitting your applications as early as possible. Please don't be on the fence. Please don't keep things for the last moment. If you're really clear about, a lot of the scholarships do have applications around the round 1 period, and some of the others maybe later. You really have to find out and make sure that you finish it off well at once. As I've said, this is a very strong decision that they make. And, money is something that, when it comes to that, they lock in candidates that we really want in their business school much early and much in advance. So make sure that you're one of them. And lastly, please put in effort for the application process. It's not a fun process. I've gone through it. So writing your essays, and it feels like, let me just get it over with. But please don't do that. I think it's more of an effort that you have to put in for like a couple of months. GMAT is essential. It really shows that you're going to succeed there. You need to make sure, if you are studying right now, that you kind of make sure that you do well in your academics. If your letters of recommendations are really important, maintain good connect. Your work experience, make sure that you're not going for the just the general this thing. Try to kind of like really stand out, take initiatives, do different things that becomes worthy of talking about it. So there are multiple scholarships essay as well, and kind of varies from different one scholarship to another. That's another thing that you have to put in a lot of effort towards. Mostly scholarships are definitely for people who kind of like excel in multiple areas, which is why make sure you bring that out if you have at some point done that as well. So that's it from my end. Let me actually start taking questions. I think I've spoken enough. I see there are a couple of questions in the
Thank you,
chat
Seema. That
already.
was a very, very informative and insightful session.
I'm glad. I hate going on and on, but yeah.
All right. So Archit had the first question, whether
Mhm.
the score of GC taken before Jan 31st will be considered by business schools both in India and abroad for next year's admission process.
100% yes.
The score
So the score validity is for 5 years, and that's going to remain the same. And please don't let anything come in the way of understanding the fact that business schools are smart. They are, people who are working there, who are part of the AdCom committee, they are really intelligent people. And we have a very long-standing association, and the council is made up of, as I said, business schools. They know how to look at both the scores. You don't have to be worried. You can continue sending your current scores as well if you want to. But yes, it is going to be remain valid for the next 5 years.
And as Seema also mentioned at some point in the presentation, it will be the percentiles that they would look at, right?
Exactly.
So there won't be
Exactly.
any confusion, even though it's not entirely apples to apples with IR, SC.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's really the percentile that will be important.
I'm glad, Archit. That's a great relief to hear that it's a great relief for you.
So yeah, so I know, Archit, that you have been preparing for the GMAT current edition. So my recommendation would be to proceed ahead with writing the exam in the current form.
Okay. Any other questions? Should I buy the new GMAC books if we take the Focus edition? I was thinking of giving GMAT by November 25th. Not necessarily. I mean, I'm sure that you get material from the team as well. I mean, if you're preparing with them, you can actually go through that. If essential, maybe the section that maybe like a data insights review might work for you if you're thinking about Focus edition, so that you have that full perspective about the entire section together. But besides that, you can go ahead with the preparation for the current books also, not an issue.
Exactly. It's really the mocks that are more important. So
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
want to consider purchasing mocks, that would be better.
exactly.
The new Focus edition official guide, at least at this stage, really, it's just a reduction of content from the previous.
Yeah, I kind of like, the items are not changing massively.
Correct,
It's just for
correct.
the same kind of question. So it doesn't really make sense. And I
Indeed,
can tell you, go ahead and buy that, but then it really doesn't make any sense
indeed,
for you guys. So
exactly.
yeah,
But the mocks have got great questions. So
absolutely. Because the
apologies.
whole
Again,
format and how they adjust with the format makes sense. So
indeed, indeed.
Hi, Seema, Ronak here.
hi, Ronak.
Yeah. Seema, I just wanted to understand whether, like, I've been preparing for the current version of the exam and I booked my test dates as well. But at the
Okay.
same point in time, if I feel like the test, like, my preparation is not up to the mark, so is there a possibility of deferring the exam?
So right now, I mean, rescheduling, you mean, right?
Yeah,
Yes, you
yeah.
can reschedule the exam, but you wouldn't now be able to reschedule the exam beyond Jan 31st. if it's a current version of the exam. That's the only catch.
Okay.
Sorry.
So which means I cannot like change it to the focus edition as well.
Oh, you can change it to the focus edition. I mean, but then if you reschedule it anytime, so here's a good part. It's like a smart part actually. If you reschedule it to after Jan 31st, you'll be able to reschedule it to the focus edition.
Okay, okay. And we
You
can
get
do it
my point?
at
Yeah.
this point as well, right?
Sorry?
We can do it at right now
Yes.
as well. Okay.
Yeah. So if you until Jan 31st, you'll be, if you reschedule it, it's going to be definitely the current version of the exam itself. But you're like, oh, I do want to kind of like reschedule it after Jan 31st. That would be like focus edition. You wouldn't get anything but focus edition, isn't it? So
Understood. Thank you so much.
no problem.
Hi, I'm Yatisha.
Hi, Yatisha.
So just in addition to Ronak's question, so let's say if I've already booked for the dates for the current version, and then but I plan that I need some extra time. So if I switch, like you said, that it'll be deferred to the GMAT Focus. So will that be at an additional cost?
No, rescheduling right now. I have to check with after 31st though. Pre-scheduling, I think rescheduling to a later date will be an additional cost, but let me get back to you on that one. Didn't really cross my mind, but let me check that. But anything after 31st, if you have booked to, kind of advancing the date, that is free of cost. But this is something that I have to check. I strongly do believe that would be at an additional cost of about $50 if I'm not wrong. But yeah, 50 or 55.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
thank
you. No problem.
So Nishant had a question. If the GMAT Focus is an adaptive exam also, then how can we go back and change answers? Because the next question was based on the previous response.
Correct. So there's actually, when we kind of like talk to you, obviously there's a lot that goes behind in the algorithm that we don't really get into the nitty-gritty details, but let me simplify for you, okay? The exam does not allow you to skip any questions. So until you reach the end of the section, it's working in a completely adaptive manner. And that does not change. When you go back and change the response, then let's say, putting it really simply, the overall score gets adjusted. Now, is this going to be massive? Let me be very realistic here. That score change that you make when that adjustment that happens towards the end when you make that change, that's not going to be a massive change, because you have to think both ways. You can change a correct answer to a wrong answer also. And you don't want that to massively affect your entire score. There's going to be a small help in terms of that adjustment that happens towards the end, if that makes sense.
So yeah, I mean, the important thing, Nishant, is you can only review or change answers once you reach the end of a section, right? So you can't do it, mid-section.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose it's not truly question adaptive as it was in the old sense, but during the section, it's question adaptive. And then when you change, I suppose the question then mainly was, well, I mean, if you got, let's say, the second and third questions incorrect, then automatically the fourth question would be easier. But let's say now you went back and changed the second and third questions to correct. So how would the test adjust for that? Well, the adjustment, as Seema mentioned, is going to be pretty minor.
It is not going to be massive for sure. I mean, the adaptiveness takes precedence over everything.
Absolutely. So again, I mean, use the review feature judiciously. Don't rely on it to, make careless mistakes at the start in the hope that you'll come back and fix it later.
Yeah. Isha, I can see your question. How much in advance do I need to book the focus version if I plan to write it in coming December? I would say try to apply, register for it now itself. While it's really good for us, like a lot of people are actually registering for the exam, but and we are working very strongly towards making sure that the exam dates are available, your required slots are available, but there is going to be probably the slots running out. So, which is why I've been advising everybody. I mean, it's not a guaranteed sort of thing that you're not going to find, but I've been strongly advising everybody to book earlier. I mean, at least 2 months in advance. At least 2 months in advance. So you can do sooner, but otherwise at least 2 months in advance.
I mean, the sooner you book, the better the chances of not having any last minute test services
Exactly.
not being
Exactly.
offered or centers getting full,
Mm.
things like that,
The
right?
problem is, Param, because there's continuous, because this, there's a rush for the exam. You know that a lot of people kept it for the last moment to make that decision and go for the exam, which is why there's like a huge pent-up demand, and a lot of people are booking their dates. And I'm like, we are increasing the slots, but do make sure that there's a high likelihood that it's going to run out really fast. That's the only
Correct.
reason.
And also take into account the fact that we live in India, right? So
Yeah.
so Murphy's Law, right?
Yeah. I never believed in luck anyways. So I think I don't see any other questions. Anybody's got any other questions?
Guys, if you have any other questions, please do type it in the chat box, or you can also use your mic to speak up.
Hi, Isha this side only.
Hi.
Hi,
Good
Isha.
evening, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So I just want to confirm with you whether the review time that we are being given, that has to be given from our sectional time, or that will be given separately.
Oh no, it's like any other exam. You would find that no exam actually gives you additional time for reviewing. So if you have 45 minutes and you have maybe about 1 to 2 minutes or 2 to 3 minutes remaining at the end of a section, that's when it will take you to the review page. Let's say that you don't have any time remaining, and you're like just completed the last question and sort of the last second, you'll be immediately taken to the next section.
Correct.
All right, understood. Thank you.
No problem. So I think that's it for the questions.
Rahul had one more. Do you think accuracy is more critical in the newer version, as we have fewer overall questions in the newer version compared to the older version? Intuitively, you'd have to say yes, but let's hear from Seema.
This is like a fun question, because I'll tell you one thing. Accuracy has always been critical in the current version of the newer version. Because I mean, obviously you need to get the questions right to improve your percentile ranking, and obviously go through the question adaptive nature. I think it's a given that is going to be important, but is it more important than the current version? I kind of like say not exactly, because even if you did want to get 1 or 2 questions wrong, your percentile ranking is still going to be basis the other people who have taken the test during that time. Plus, the way you actually go about it is you start with an easy medium question, the next question gets harder, and that adaptiveness continues, and no question has been specifically made hard to kind of like trouble you. In terms of accuracy, 100% yes, it is important. Not just in the newer version, it's always been important.
Correct. The only one other point which I'd like to mention is that in the current version, you've also got experimental questions, right?
Right, fewer, but yes.
Yeah, 3 in quant, 6 in verbal, and probably 4 in IR. So that number will go down. So in that sense, the accuracy probably takes a greater precedence. But for marked questions, it's really the same, right?
Yeah. But again, one of the things in my experience of teaching also, what I like to point out to the candidates is, let's say I got one question. I was doing all the questions well, and it's going good, harder question, and then suddenly I get an easy question.
Yeah, that could mean anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to get oh damn, like I've messed up, I've gone really wrong. And I've seen people who mess up the entire section because they have already kind of like determined their fate. And I always say this, maybe you found it easy, whereas the rest of the population found it hard.
That's always
so you have to be very objective and not get emotional during the exam, or kind of like make all of these judgments during the exam. That's not your job to do that at that particular point in time. So
or the thing which I tell my students is that if you get such an easy question, probably the algorithm ran out of questions to give you. So take it as a positive, right?
But yeah, don't
you have enough
don't
pressure in
get
the test
bogged
as
down by
it's,
that.
so
Yeah.
not to burden yourself with another layer of
Absolutely.
external that we cannot control. Cool. So I think that pretty much answers
I
all
had
of
a
our questions.
question.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, hi Seema.
Hi
So
there.
I'm a little
Hi.
new to the preparation. I just wanted to ask because it's a new exam, right? And the percentiles would be calculated basis the students giving the exam. So does it I don't know, like does it make a difference if we are giving the exam in the first month or we are giving the
No,
exam
the
5 months
you
later?
know what? There's a lot of calibration that happens at the back end. If you'll see that when we talk about this course, also we say that it's based on the past 5 years of data. There's a way for the team to actually do that. The psychometric, we have an entire team of psychometricians to do that. I mean, obviously, I'll not be able to best explain to you because I'm not an expert at it, but it's not definitely taken in consideration of just this particular cycle. So you don't have to be worried about that. They have their own ways of actually calibrating it.
Understood. Okay. Thank you so much.
No problem. Any more questions, guys?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Okay, guys. So thank you so much for attending and asking all of your questions. And thank you so much, Seema, for taking out
Thank you.
so much time and giving us so much time, answering all the questions patiently, and of course, walking through the presentation during the first half. I'm sure all of our queries regarding the GMAT Focus, at least from the administrative side of things, those have been answered, right? The academic side of things, well, we are here, I am here, right? We are not going anywhere. And the more mocks we write, the better understanding we get, the more classes we attend, the finer understanding becomes.
Yeah.
So yeah, on that note, thank you so much, Seema, for your valuable time. I'll be sharing the resources that Seema mentioned with regard to the scholarship options, right, with you guys by tomorrow.
Absolutely. So I'm just dropping in my name in the chat so that if anybody wants to connect, you can. I'm pretty responsive on LinkedIn unless and until I'm traveling and like super busy. But if you have any questions, you can hit me up. Of course, you can reach out to Param and reach out to me as well, and he can kind of let me know that you guys have questions. But either ways, all the best. Don't get intimidated. Change is always we tend to be wary of change, but change often is for the good. So just don't worry in any way, and trust me that we're such a traditional organization, and we won't go about doing anything without having your best interest at heart. So
absolutely. All right.
And
so
thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Seema. Thank you, guys. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your Sunday. Take care. Have a good night. Thank you again, Seema.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.